back, listeners, to another beautiful episode on the Soul Sparks podcast. Now, for today's episode, we are going to dive into something very, very beautiful, the connection between the soul and somatic self care, the real tools for calm that actually work even if you don't have time. Now, listeners, by the way, I'm your host, Sana, and sometimes our bodies they whisper before they shout. Sometimes it's a subtle ache in the shoulders, a breath that never quiet fills the lungs, a restless hum under the skin. And unfortunately, we brush it off because life is busy. We are busy. Because someday we'll slow down and take care of ourselves. But what happens when our soul and body finally demand that we listen? Now, listeners, today's episode is a guide for that. My guest, Rachel Lundberg, she knows firsthand how urgency, belief systems, and chronic illness can shape a body and spirit. Her work bridges movement, mindfulness, and deep alignment, offering a way back to ourselves without the pressure to get it all perfect. So, with that, Rachel, welcome to the show, and I'm really, really excited for you to have you with us.
I'm really excited to be here, Sana. Thank you so much for that introduction.
Um, okay, Rachel, before we talk about understanding the connection, let's do a bit of deep dive into your personal intersection. So you have navigated chronic illness, then a major life transition, and then a complete kind of overhaul of how you approach movement. So how did you realize that self-care wasn't just about what you did for your body, but also about how your soul was into it?
That's such a rich question. And that came about for me when I've always been in movement throughout my life. I trained as a dancer, and then I started a study of yoga a little later in life. But I when I was a young mother,
Mhm.
I had not been listening to my body, even though I moved my body a lot. I had not been
Mhm.
listening to my body, and my body got to a point of overwhelm through pregnancies and caring for young children, and started a series of chronic illness
Mhm.
experiences that were difficult to diagnose, with that took up a lot of my time, caused a lot of suffering, and put me on a journey of finding my way back home. And now, after a long period of time working with chronic illness, so it was well over a decade, um,
Mhm.
I came across the opportunity to learn about how the brain works. And in that learning of how the brain and nervous system work, I was able
Mhm.
to learn how to train myself back into a space of being within my body. And back to your original question or comment about how did I know that things were out of alignment? I don't know that I knew that at the time. I
Mhm.
didn't know the signs to look for to show that I was out of alignment. That I
Mhm.
now have the tools, I didn't have them then. So
Mhm.
anytime, like you said in the beginning, those whispers that coming from the body, those messages from the body, those little quiet messages do accumulate over time. And when we ignore them over and over and over again, something typically will awaken us. And it doesn't have to be super dramatic, like something like that happened to me, but an injury may occur, or a relationship might fall apart, or maybe just things will start to demonstrate to you that it's time to slow down and really take a look at how you're living your life and who you're living your life for. And if that's really in alignment with the message and the purpose of your soul.
That's very well put, Rachel. Very well put. And I also agree with you that not everyone will have that scientific knowledge to understand, but it's kind of, that's the beauty of the human body, the mind, and the soul, that through these nudges, or sometimes the pain that we try to ignore or brush it off, there will be a time when we come to realize that it's now time to really really address, really acknowledge that yes, our body needs attention, our mind, our soul, they need attention. um and Rachel, you talk about place for calm that work even for busy people. Can you share one somatic practice that feels almost too simple, but yet it is very, very effective?
Absolutely. So, my go-to that I can do at any place, anytime, whether I'm in a business meeting or at the grocery store or talking, with friends, is simply gently rubbing your hands together, um,
Mhm.
rubbing your fingers past the other fingers on the other hand, or
Okay.
gently stroking your fingers on your arm. It doesn't have to be anything that anyone would ever pick up on you doing. But when you do that with awareness, that self touch um, starts to calm the nervous system down because our bodies are looking for reassurance. They're looking to be nurtured, cared for, seen, especially in those moments when we're feeling overwhelmed. And it's truly our job to show up for ourselves. And so just something as gentle as rubbing the inner arm or rubbing the hands. And another one that I like to add one more in is if you're comfortable with it, is just placing your hands over your heart space and taking some slow, steady breaths. And oftentimes that might be one that maybe you wouldn't do, obviously, in the middle of an active meeting or something like that.
Yeah.
But maybe you go to the restroom or you're in your car, or you find a quiet moment and you can just put your hands over your heart and take 3 slow, steady breaths and remind yourself that you are present, that you're right here for you right now.
Mm. No, I really like the heart one. But yeah, it's not every time possible when we are in a meeting or talking to someone. Yeah.
Or I'll
Yeah.
just tap on my sternum. So anything that you can do, I really am a huge advocate of self-touch, and because our bodies crave human connection, our bodies crave touch, and sometimes we are not in a relationship or have family members or friends that where we can hug and receive that loving touch. And so we can provide that for ourselves. And we do release the chemical oxytocin, which is the bonding chemical, the nurturing chemical, with our own self touch. So it's incredibly powerful for us to harness the capacity that we have to soothe ourselves through that.
Mm.
And by doing that, our nervous system starts to settle down, and with a settled down nervous system, we can
Mhm.
bring ourselves more easily into alignment.
Interesting. Interesting. I think sometimes the smallest actions, they can also carry the maximum impact. But it's kind of whether in conditioning or in tri- I mean conventional discussions, that transformation has to be complicated to be very effective and very real.
Or that there has to be a lot of suffering in order for us to change, and
Yeah.
that's not true. That's not true at all. However, many of us don't choose to change or to make shifts until the suffering is here. And
Mhm.
that's kind of just part of the human condition. We can be proactive or reactive. Either way, we'll probably arrive at the same place. But with proactiveness and you'll oftentimes there will be maybe a little less suffering.
Yeah, I agree. That's a really, really good point, Rachel. Okay, now a bit of a nuanced point here, Rachel. I would love to know your opinion on this. Now, some people would say that somatic self-care, it's a privilege. Not everyone maybe has the access to be aware about it, or maybe has the time, space, or resources to focus on their body in this way. So how would you respond to this criticism?
I would say that will only work for so long. So the further we become disconnected from our body because we're ignoring our body, the louder the body will become. It's like a toddler that's hungry for a snack and you're ignoring the toddler and they scream louder and
Mm.
louder and louder. So it's just a matter of time before we awaken to that. And we can still ignore it even once the pain and suffering are here. And oftentimes people will do that, continue to ignore. Um,
Mm.
but at some point, what happens, and I think this is, what happened for me, is there becomes a disconnect. And I've seen it happen for a lot of people that have come to do work with me, is that at some point along the way, there was a pretty full disconnect from body. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so much so that that those illnesses set in, that lots of suffering ensued, and prolonged and or paused basically life in a sense, or prolonged the suffering and paused the joyful
Mm-hmm.
living that could have been possible at that time. Now, I don't regret that experience because it was my greatest teacher and has led me to be able to talk about the things that I talk about now and share and teach about. Um, but when we become disconnected from our bodies will let us know ultimately, or they'll just completely shut down and stop working.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because where we don't give our attention, those things prune away, whether
Mm.
it's our physical body, our mental health, that, they'll atrophy over time.
True. True. I agree. I agree with you, Rachel. Um, and you left a high demand belief system at 41, and that's a huge act of alignment. I highly uh, admire that. I mean, how did that personal shift influence the way you teach self-care now?
Wow, it's a great question. Any Anytime that anyone changes a belief system,
Mm-hmm.
um, it directly impacts the way that your brain, body, spirit interact with each other. Um,
Hmm.
we are beings of, if we're just living from our mind space, we are living from the habits and belief systems that we've adopted through a lifetime. And for myself, I was born into a high demand religion that had a lot of rules and a lot of demand, and also a lot of wrongness and fear built into
Mm-hmm.
it. And that wrongness and fear infiltrated my physical body over time and created a deep disconnect from my essence. And so something that was intended to be a spiritual practice and something to align me more with my soul's purpose and with God became the thing that disconnected me from my spiritual essence and my, what I was intended to really do on the planet. And
Mm-hmm.
the realization of that came much pretty pretty deep into my healing journey from my chronic illness. Came the
Mm-hmm.
realization that this chronic illness and this disconnect in my life stemmed from a belief system that I was born into and really adhered to. Um, but it wasn't in alignment with who I am and
Mm-hmm.
how I want to operate in the world and how I want to interact with other people and how I want to see the world and how I want to serve the world. And so I truly deepened into my healing journey when I made the courageous decision to leave that religious space. With my then husband and three children, we all decided to leave, and both of our families
Mm-hmm.
are still part of those religious systems. and I really appreciate the way that I was brought up, and also um grateful that the message from my soul was strong enough to give me the
Mm-hmm.
courage to leave that high demand religion and build my own personal life of alignment, which is why I'm so passionate about each of us as humans finding our own path of alignment, our own yoga of alignment, basically our life of alignment, and it doesn't have to look like anyone else's.
Exactly.
And often that's what our bodies are asking of us, is to stop trying to live someone else's life, someone else's beliefs, someone else's opinions. But what is it that's calling to you? And can you heed that call? And, it doesn't mean that it won't be challenging to heed that call, or that
Mm-hmm.
things won't, fall away. But I can guarantee you that on the other side of that, there is a whole bountiful beauty, that will inspire you to continue moving in your own path of alignment.
Wow, Rachel, I'm really, really blown away with what you just said. Because um when these belief systems they involve our loved ones, I mean, it must be such a difficult decision, and that really needs a great deal of grit, resilience, clarity, mental strength, and of course, I mean, that's really courageous, Rachel. Really courageous. And yeah, you're right. We our bodies, our soul flourishes when it's not dictated or living through somebody else's way of uh, living or um, processes or methods. So that is very courageous,
Absolutely.
Rachel. Yeah.
Well, I don't say that, in the sense of that to display a sense of
Yeah.
courage on my part, other than what really gave me the courage to even ask
Mhm,
the questions was
mhm,
honestly an understanding of the way that the brain is formed throughout our lives, and how we are born. Each of us are born into a system of some kind, culturally, um, systemically. We're born into these systems, and we adopt the systems that are required in order for us to be accepted by our family, our friends, our communities. And I really believe that one of the big journeys of being a human is the time when we come to this space where we ask ourselves if those beliefs are ours.
mhm,
Is that actually what I believe? Is that actually how I want to operate my life? Is that actually how I want to view the world? And when we can start to ask those questions, and we can understand that the brain is constantly changing and can constantly be remolded, it
mhm,
it can give us courage to change habit systems, abuse, substance abuse, traumatic experiences from our lives, the ways that
mhm,
our body is reacting to those, and we become empowered to make courageous choices that benefit our own alignment, while still loving those that we interact with. And we don't have to shun them or push away the ways that we've
yeah,
been raised, or the things that we thought were true. Um, but we can be a beacon of light, of that a life can be reinvented, and that we are actually we are a co-creator of what's happening in our life and how we want to move forward with our life.
very well said, Rachel. Ah, beautiful, beautiful. That's a really, I think, a very soul level, very profound reflection. I must appreciate you for being so open to share this with all of us. And Rachel, before we conclude, of course, if our listeners they would like to connect with you and explore more about the work that you do through Yoga Oak University and alignment-based yoga specialist, what would be the best way?
Yes, so I work with people from the level of the physical practice of yoga and movement up to and into the levels of nervous system rewiring and really saying yes to your own path of alignment. So I offer these programs through yogaoakuniversity.com. I offer physical classes that you can take from me, as well as programs specifically designed for nervous system rewiring. And I also trained yoga teachers of the specific way of teaching yoga that helps to bridge the gap between what we think is cool yoga and what is actually
Okay.
yoga that meets people where they're at. And that's my alignment based yoga specialist certification program. So, all of that information you can find at yogaoakuniversity.com. Or also, you can find out about the wellness center that I own and operate, where I have my physical yoga studio, and that's at thriveyogaoc.com. And we're in Oregon City, Oregon.
Super, super. I'll make sure to have all the links for our listeners in the show notes. And Rachel, thank you for this amazing, amazing conversation, reflection. Um, I mean, I think you are reminding us that somatic self-care, it isn't just about adding more to our plate, but it's about making space for what nourishes both our bodies and souls. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
So, to all the listeners of Soul Sparks out there, it's not the perfect morning routine or a 90-minute class that changes everything. It can be the small, the steady ways we listen, breathe, and realign when the world asks us to move faster. So, if you have been waiting for the right time to care for yourself, maybe this is the moment in whatever way you can. Because when your body and soul start speaking the same language, calm stops being something you chase and it becomes the place you live, you thrive. So, thank you so much, listeners, for tuning into the Soul Sparks. And do check out the show notes along with this episode on your favorite podcast platform. And until then, this is your host, Sana, signing off. Thank you.